Hello, dear people. I heard a story about the making of the movie Field of Dreams, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And the story goes that director Phil Robinson would go back to his trailer on the set every night and think, this movie isn't working. I'm not doing well. I could have done that better. And he had lots of negative thoughts about the film. He kept judging himself and criticizing his directorial talents. Well, guess what? It turned out to be a great, great film. It was one of five nominated for Best Picture that year and become a classic, metaphysical classic. And the point is that you may be engaged in doing something that's absolutely great, a miracle, a gift to humanity. But a nasty, self-judgmental ego voice will poke at you and pick at you and prod at you and tell you it's not working. And so a lot of the spiritual path is about learning to rise above that voice and not let it get to you. You've heard me say, my teacher used to say, the dogs bark and the caravan moves on. So there's this voice going on, but if you give in, then the dogs have won. And they've succeeded in halting the caravan that's on its way to a really good place. Now, someone once said, when you give a public lecture, there are really three speeches that you give. One is a speech you prepare, one is a speech you give, and the other is a speech you wish you gave. And pretty much after I give a talk or a coaching session, I always think of something I could have said that would have been better or something I could have added. Well, maybe, but I don't let that voice get me down anymore because I know it's a good product anyway. Maybe next time we'll do even better. But you can't afford to let that what if voice get to you. I think I heard an interview with Paul McCartney who said that people criticize the Beatles' White Album. And he said, come on, it's the Beatles' White Album. It's a good album. It's a great album. You can always find fault with something. I think John Sibelius, the composer of Finlandia, a famous classical piece, said, no statue has ever been erected to a critic. And we can talk about the inner critic as much as the external critic. We may complain that other people criticize us, but it's really our own self-criticism that we're dealing with, are we not? Sally Kempton said, it's impossible to defeat an enemy who has an outpost in your head. In other words, you may be battling an external critic, but there must be something inside you that agrees with them. Otherwise, they couldn't get to you. So this is the blessing that criticism really offers us because it's getting us to examine what in here in me agrees with that person. If they didn't agree with them, they couldn't get to you. So if I said to you, let's say you're wearing a nice white blouse, I said, it's an ugly orange sweater you're wearing. Well, if you know that you're wearing a nice white blouse, my criticism of your ugly orange sweater, it's a fault in my perception. It's not your problem, it's the problem of the critic. So we want to reframe criticism as a gift. If it's valid and it can help you, use it. But if you try it on for size, it doesn't fit, it belongs to the critic, not to the person being criticized. Now, a lot of us have grown up trying to keep proving ourselves because we think we're not enough, because as a child, someone told us we're not enough. I had a client who was a very successful entrepreneur. She had several businesses and she was a president and she had lots of accolades. And she was always trying to get more degrees, more credentials, more boards, get onto more boards. And it turns out that as a child, her father, who was a strict military man, programmed her to think that she could never do enough. No matter what she did, it was not great. It had to be perfect. And what child is perfect? None, except in spirit. And so she grew up with this kind of a hunger or an aching to prove herself. And no matter what she did, no matter how much she achieved in the world, she was still hungry and aching because she did not know inside herself that she was already enough. And as I worked with her in coaching over a period of time, she got that I'm enough. And she started, pursuing no more degrees. And she turned her company over to her family, and she became a very happy, successful, spiritually successful person because she was no longer dancing to the tune of her father, who had died many years ago, but he still lived in her head. And it's impossible to defeat an enemy who has an outpost in your head. You have to deal with that part of your mind that does not know you or love you or accept you or appreciate you. And when you start to get what a lie that is, and what a hoax the world has played on you, that you believed, you bought it, then you start to say, hey, maybe I'm enough. Maybe I deserve good things. Maybe I deserve a great relationship. Maybe I deserve prosperity. Maybe I deserve a happy, healthy body. Maybe because I'm created in the image and likeness of a perfect God, then my life should reflect the gifts that God has given me instead of me squashing them or denying them or pushing them aside. And the world is often not a great judge of talent, at least not in the lifetime of the talented person. Van Gogh, during his lifetime, he sold only one painting for about $300, so to speak. Believe it or not, many of his paintings were sold for the wood value of the frames, which were being used for firewood. Can you believe that? Fast forward 100 years or two, one of his paintings was sold for the highest price ever of a painting. It was, I think, $450 million for one of his paintings. He was not acknowledged in his lifetime. If you want to see a fabulous, touching excerpt, go to YouTube and look up Doctor Who, which is a British fantasy series, where Vincent goes to the museum. And it's a fantasy about Vincent Van Gogh coming back to a museum in modern times. And he's shown the success of his work and he's being lauded as one of the greatest painters who's ever lived. Can you imagine the contrast between that? He committed suicide. He's not emotionally healthy. If he were acknowledged during his lifetime, might that have changed? Perhaps. But I recently heard that when Roger Ebert, the film critic, was passing away, one of his last words was, "It's all a big hoax." And his wife said, "What's a big hoax?" And he answered, "The world." And this is what the Course in Miracles tells us. The Course tells us that the world that seems so solid and so demanding and so arbitrary and so obligatory is nothing but a weird dream. And because most people are not connected to spirit, they're coming from a place of lack or judgment or fear or hate. And that seems to form a solid world, but it's not. It's just a bunch of people's weird opinions making things seem even weirder because they agree on them. So you want to do some real inner work. We all need to do this, where you just go within and you shine the light on your inner critic. And you start to notice the things you're doing because you're believing the inner critic, all the lies it tells. Now, I had a neighbor who was a very nervous woman. And she was very uptight and she could hardly sit still. And she was going in and out of her driveway all the time. And she was always had emergencies and drama. And I wondered why she was like that. As I got to know her, she was raised in a very oppressive religion that taught her to feel guilty. And so most of her actions were motivated by guilt because she was afraid that if she sat still for even a few moments, she would be confronted by her ugly, evil self that would consume her. And so she was basically running from guilt her entire life. And she was a lovely person. I didn't see any guilt in her. I thought she was a great person. But she didn't know that. So this is the effect that that inner critic can have on you if you're not careful. A Course in Miracles says that illusions are as strong in their effects as the truth. In other words, you can be living an illusion and create a life as if that illusion were true, even if it's not true. And so this is why it's so important to have the guts to look yourself in the mirror, so to speak, and to ask, who am I really? Am I really that stupid person that my parents compare who my parents compared to my brother for not getting better grades? Am I really unworthy because I seem to be overweight? Is there something wrong with me because I've been divorced once or twice or thrice or had a lot of relationships? These are all lies that have been laid upon us by a fearful society. Now I'm in Japan at the moment, and in Japan, there's a big pressure on young women getting married at an early age. And there's this sad but funny maxim here. They say that the Christmas cakes are stale on the 26th of December. And the idea is that you're supposed to get married by age 25, otherwise you're stale. It's a terrible oppressive thing to put on young women. They get over 25 and they think nobody wants me anymore. Well, this is not true. A lot of my clients get married in their 40s and 50s. They just, when they find out that they're lovable, no matter what age they are, they end up attracting a great person who loves them for who they are. So we just have to become very, very aware of all the illusions that have been laid over us and begin to boldly and courageously confront them and say, wait a minute, I refuse to live by somebody else's criticism anymore. And even if I've adopted it and bought it, I ain't going to study war no more. So, you could be a Van Gogh. I live in Hawaii, and Barack Obama grew up in Hawaii. And I wonder if you were one of the guys playing basketball with Barack, I think it was Punahou High School, the private school he went to. Could you believe that this tall, skinny kid playing basketball next to you was going to become a great president of the United States, a man of great integrity? Now, what if you were Barack Obama at age 18? Could you imagine that? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But, there are seeds of greatness in us, and some of us fan them with confidence, and others toss water on them because we have bought the false criticisms that were laid over us. So it's time. I coach clients who are 30, 40, 50 years old, and I say, you've been criticizing yourself for 40 years. Do you really want to go on for the next 40 years doing the same thing? I don't want to have this conversation with you in 40 years, please. And they go, yeah, I don't want to have a conversation either. Of course they don't. So would this not be the perfect day to dump that inner critic, say, thank you for sharing, but I'm going to move forward anyway? The dogs bark and the caravan moves on. I'll tell you one more secret before we close. So as I've observed, we all have an ego, we all have self-criticism, we all have issues. Nobody doesn't. As I've said, Ram Dass said that great spiritual masters are just as neurotic as the rest of us, but to them, the neuroses are irrelevant. So we all have stuff going on. And I've observed that the people who truly succeed, the truly great people, are those who move forward anyway. That even though you didn't give the greatest lecture, well, your next one might be better. And maybe it was great. You know, when we train our coaches, they have to do practice coaching sessions. And the coach evaluates his or her session, and the client evaluates the session. And in many cases, the coaches are self-critical. Oh, I could have done better. I didn't use the skills. I don't know how much this person really received. And then I read the client's comment. Oh, that was a great session. I got illuminated about this, and I feel there was a healing around that. And the coach was listened to me, and the coach validated me. And I'm thinking, was this the same coaching session? Like, how could the coach have such a dark perception of the session and the client have such a light perception? Well, each person was viewing the session through the filter of their own belief system. So the coach slipped into inner critic and the client slipped into inner appreciator. So I say to the coach, I say, you both can't be right. What you said about the session cannot be can't be the same. So who would you rather have be right? You can be right about it not working, or the client could be right about it being a great session. You get to choose. No man can serve two masters. He will love the one and hate the other, or love the one and despise the other. You can't play both sides of the fence simultaneously. Coach says, well, okay, I'd rather have the client be right. Well, hallelujah. So what if you let the people who love you be right? Even if you have just a handful of people in your life, 1, 2, 3, 4 people who really get you and understand you and validate you and support you for who you are without demanding you change to be something better. What if you let the people who support and get you be right, and everybody else can just kind of do what they're doing? It's their business, not yours. I think Terry Cole Whitaker once wrote a book called "What You Think of Me Is None of My Business," especially if you're criticizing me. What else can I say? It's the bottom line of the work that we're all doing. And we're doing it. I see people unfolding and blossoming and awakening on a daily basis. And I think you're one of them. We're starting a next coaching session in January. If you want to become a certified holistic life coach with me and about 24 lovely people, it's a fabulous life-changing course. Go to my website, alancohen.com, and we can get you in for January. Okay, let's close with a moment of knowing, shall we? Take a breath. So really do this with me, please. Pay attention if you can and really drop in. I now dive deep within myself and I drop beneath and below the personality level that has been criticized and that has believed a certain amount of criticism. Below that layer of muck, we shall say, that layer of clouds, there's a light in me. It's the light of God, the light of spirit, the light of absolute wholeness and completion and perfection that has never been touched or marred or sullied by one event or one word in this world. Your divine identity has remained intact in spite of appearances to the contrary. So would you please with me take just a moment now to drop into that self-appreciative, self-honoring, self-accepting place that knows that you're a good person. It's even beyond being a good person. You're a God person. You're a whole person. I am created in the image and likeness of a loving, perfect, wonderful, complete God. My life is a gift to me and to everyone else. I will not listen to that critic anymore. If it shows up, I'll say, thank you for sharing and moving forward anyway. I will deliver my gifts to the world. I will be who I am. I will trust my guidance. I will move forward anyway. And I'm so grateful I was created just as I am to be the light of the world. And I'm so blessed. And as we're all doing this together, and even if you're watching this at different times, it doesn't matter because there's no time and spirit. There's a pool of consciousness where all the rising tide raising all the ships. So at this moment, not only is the universe contributing to your well-being, but you're contributing to the well-being of the universe, which is all you came for, to be the light of the world. And so it is. Thank you so much for joining me. I love you all. Thanks for listening. I will see you again soon. Take care.